I'm very pleased to be here tonight, and as Marilyn said, I am a member of the State Board for the League of Women Voters of Michigan, and I'm here representing the League of Women Voters of Michigan Education Fund. So tonight we're talking about the 3 statewide proposals, and what we're going to do tonight, we're going to help you understand the ballot language, how these proposals would work, the pros and cons to consider, and the major supporters and opponents. The League is not responsible for the views or facts provided by these groups. We are really fortunate in Michigan that we have a constitution that gives 2 powers to the voters that not all states have. Actually, 24 states have them. One is called the initiative, and it gives voters the right, if certain conditions are met, to initiate legislation or laws and to amend the Michigan Constitution. The other right is called referendum, and it gives the voters the right, if certain conditions are met, to put on the ballot the question of whether a law the legislature already passed should be redone. You may remember that a few years ago the voters undid the emergency manager law, and the legislature immediately passed a new one and attached an appropriation to it, which under Michigan Constitution makes it impossible for the voters to undo. But this year we have 3 ballot proposals, and according to Ballotpedia, between 1996 and 2015, 38 measures have appeared on the Michigan ballot. That's an average of about 4 on the ballot every even-numbered year. During that period, 18 of the 38, or 47%, were approved, while 20 of the 38, or 53%, were defeated. And you may remember there were no measures on the ballot in ballot proposals in 2016. So we have the 3 ballots through citizen petitions. 1 is a voter-initiated law, and 2 are constitutional amendments. It takes a simple majority to approve, and a voter-initiated law takes effect 10 days after the official election, and approved amendments take place 45 days and become part of the Constitution. And a constitutional amendment, once it's passed by the voters, it cannot be changed. So people say, what's a constitutional amendment? It's a modification of the Constitution. And as I mentioned, once it passes by the voters, it cannot be overturned. Can't be not changed by the legislature. An initiative, a citizen's initiative, either proposes an amendment to the Constitution or creates a new law, and it can be changed by 3/4 vote in each house of the legislature. So, if you go, when you go to the polls on Election Day, you're going to see on your ballot the 3 listed by these numbers. Proposal 18-1. Regulate marijuana like alcohol, which would be a new law. Proposal 18-2, voters not politicians petition, which would amend the Michigan Constitution. And Proposal 18-3, promote the vote petition, which amends the Constitution. So we'll take the first one, Proposal 18-1. And you'll see, when you look at it on your ballot, you'll see these words, Michigan Legalization Initiative, and it reads as follows. This is what you'll be seeing on your ballot. A proposed initiative law to authorize and legalize possession, use, and cultivation of marijuana products by individuals who are at least 21 years of age and older, and commercial sales of marijuana through state licensed retailers. So this proposal would allow individuals 21 and older to purchase, possess, and use marijuana and marijuana-infused edibles, and grow up to 12 marijuana plants for personal consumption. It would impose a 10-ounce limit for marijuana kept at residences and require amounts of over 2.5 ounces to be secured in locked containers. So people ask if there's going to be a tax rate on marijuana and how much money are we expected to generate. Because retail marijuana under this proposal would be taxed would be subject to a 10% excise tax, and that's in addition to Michigan's regular 6% sales tax. But based on marijuana usages in Michigan and the experience of other states that allow adults to use marijuana, it's estimated that this initiative would generate hundreds of millions of dollars per year in new tax revenues. And people ask, well, where would these revenues be allocated? So in addition to covering the costs of the regulation, the marijuana excise tax revenues would support Michigan schools, roads, and local governments. The distribution of the revenue would include 35% to the state school aid fund for K through 12 education, 35% to the Michigan Transportation Fund for the repair and maintenance of roads and bridges, 15% to municipalities where a marijuana business is located, and 15% to the counties where the business is located. So in addition, the taxes will provide $20 million per year for 2 years to fund FDA-approved research analyzing the benefits of medical marijuana for treating post-traumatic stress disorder and other medical conditions of U.S. Armed Service veterans. How much is going to be raised? It's an estimates range, a revenue range from $48.3 million, according to opponents of this proposal, to hundreds of millions per year, according to the supporters. It also creates a state licensing system for marijuana businesses and allows municipalities to ban or restrict them. It will permit retail sales of marijuana and edibles subject to a 10% tax dedicated to the implementation costs, clinical trials, schools, roads, and municipalities where marijuana businesses are located. It will change several current violations from crimes to civil infractions. So people have asked, well, what if you've been convicted of a marijuana crime? Would your record be removed when this final and the ballot question committee that created this proposal said that their lawyers looked at this. They thought it would be good to expunge people's records, but they felt it would not be constitutionally be able to be passed constitutionally if they had expungement along with the legalization of the cannabis. So that's why they didn't put that in the proposal. There's some penalties under this proposed law. Persons not authorized to possess, cultivate, or deliver marijuana in otherwise legal amounts would be penalized with a civil infraction or a fine of not more than $100 and forfeiture of the marijuana. People who possess, cultivate, or deliver not more than twice the amount of marijuana would be penalized with a civil infraction and a fine not more than $100 and forfeiture of marijuana for a first violation with a civil infraction and a fine of not more than $1,000 and for forfeiture for a second violation, and with a misdemeanor and a fine of not more than $2,000 and forfeiture for a third violation. Persons who possess, cultivate, or deliver more than twice the amount of marijuana would be penalized with a misdemeanor, but would not be imprisoned unless the violation was, quote, habitual, willful, and for a commercial purpose, or the violation involved violence. Persons under the legal age of 21 and who possess otherwise legal amounts of marijuana would be fined between $100 and $500 and be required to complete between 4 and 8 hours of drug education. So this is how it would work. The creation of the Michigan Regulation and Taxation of Marijuana Act would legalize the recreational use of marijuana, legalize the cultivation and sale of marijuana, permit the taxing revenue from commercial and marijuana facilities, permit creating administrative rules, and prescribe the penalties. So this slide shows states where marijuana is legal. The green states is where it's legal for both recreational and medical marijuana. The blue states is where it's legalized medical marijuana. And presently, Michigan has legalized medical marijuana. If you may remember, voters passed that in 2008. Now there will be 9 states have legalized small amounts of marijuana for adult recreational use, but there still is a federal prohibition. People have asked what type of licenses will be granted for these businesses. The initiative authorizes the state to grant licenses for 6 types of marijuana businesses: cultivators, processors, testing facilities, secure transporters, retail stores, and micro businesses. And they have different class cultivator licenses. There's 3 classes for cultivators. Class A, the micro grower license, would allow for cultivation up to 100 marijuana plants. Class B would allow for cultivation up to 500 plants. And the Class C license would allow for the cultivation up to 2,000 plants. No one would be allowed to hold more than 5 grower licenses of any type at the same time through 2023. After that point, the cap will be lifted. And also, as I mentioned before, they provide for strong local control to allow communities to regulate the types and number of marijuana businesses they want within their jurisdiction. There's a question about what would happen if people who have their medical marijuana card right now, and that doesn't seem to be addressed in this proposal. So people on the pro side who support this are saying that this proposal is a sensible alternative to Michigan's failed policy of marijuana prohibition. It positions Michigan as a national leader in the adoption of smart adult use marijuana laws. It creates state-regulated system of licensed marijuana businesses. It enacts an excise tax on marijuana at the retail level in addition to the standard state sales tax. The source for this information is from the Coalition to Regulate Marijuana Like Alcohol. Who are the supporters? The Coalition to Regulate Marijuana Like Alcohol, which is regulatemi.org. Also the American Civil Liberties Union, the Marijuana Law Section of the State Bar of Michigan, the Marijuana Policy Project, My Legalize, Michigan Cannabis Coalition, Michigan NORML, and National Patients' Rights Association. The con side for this proposal: the recreational marijuana industry targets youth. Recreational marijuana makes for dangerous drivers. Today's marijuana is not the marijuana previous generations used. Recreational marijuana increases criminal activity. Recreational marijuana is not good for our economy. Creates confusion between recreational and medical marijuana regulation and taxation. The source for these arguments are from the Healthy and Productive Michigan. So who opposes this proposal? Healthy and Productive Michigan, the Committee to Keep Pot Out of Neighborhoods and Schools, Michigan Chamber of Commerce, and Smart Approaches to Marijuana Action. So let's move on to Proposal 2. On your ballot, it will be called Citizen Redistricting Commission. Proposal 2, a proposed constitutional amendment to establish a commission of citizens with exclusive authority to adopt district boundaries for the Michigan Senate, Michigan House of Representatives, and U.S. Congress every 10 years. This proposed constitutional amendment would create a commission of 13 registered voters randomly selected by the Secretary of State, 4 who each identify as affiliated with 2 major political parties, and 5 who identify as unaffiliated with major political parties. It would prohibit partisan office holders, candidates, their employees, certain relatives, and lobbyists from serving as commissioners. Establish new redistricting criteria, including geographically compact and contiguous districts of equal population, reflecting Michigan's diverse population and community's interest. Districts shall not provide disproportionate advantage to political parties or candidates, require an appropriation of funds for commission operations and commissioner compensation. If you, I'm sure you're all aware that every 10 years a U.S. Census is conducted to measure how our population has shifted around the country, and each state redraws its district lines. Every party takes advantage when they're in control to draw the lines to benefit their particular party. So this proposal would, as I said, create a Citizens Redistricting Commission. And it would be in charge of the redistricting process. The commission will be made up of 4 Democrats, 4 Republicans, and 5 independents, with representation across the state. As we mentioned before, politicians, consultants, and lobbyists will be banned from serving on the commission. The CRC is required to conduct its business in public hearings that are open to input from across the state. All proposed maps and the methodology, data to create them must be submitted as public reports. Everything down to the variables used by the computers to draw the maps will be available to the public. The CRC is required to follow a prioritized set of criteria and standards when drawing the maps. A minimum of 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans, and 2 independents on the commission must approve the final maps. This prevents one political party from controlling the process. So the proposal contains a process and timetables to apply for membership on the commission, select members for the commission, hold public hearings and meetings, use specified criteria to determine districts, and adopt redistricting plans. So if this would pass, then the Secretary of State is responsible for sending out applications around, at random to people around the state, voters around the state, and there's a whole process of these would be sent, like 10,000 would be sent out, and then it whittles down. People would have to self-identify under oath if they're one of the major political parties or an independent, and finally it gets down to the 13. But there's, like I say, there's a whole procedure for all of that. So pro side, voters should choose their politicians, not the other way around. Allowing politicians to draw their own districts is a conflict of interest, and it puts the fox in charge of the hen house. When politicians have the power to draw voting maps, they have the power to handpick their voters. And that was from Voters Not Politicians. The supporters, as you can see, there's a number of groups who have signed on to support this. The con side, Jim Holcomb, the Executive Vice President and General Counsel for the Michigan Chamber of Commerce, stated on July 9th, 2018 in a Michigan Chamber press release, the proposed redistricting proposal would drastically rewrite Michigan's constitution to change the basic foundation of state governing structure by removing the voice of the governor, legislature, and courts in the redistricting process, replacing 3 branches of government with a randomly drawn 13-member commission that would be unelected and unaccountable. The ballot proposal would also place an inordinate amount of power in the hands of a partisan Secretary of State, thus favoring one political party over the other and generating divisive partisanship, public discontent, and distrust of the political process. The opposing organizations, Protect My Vote, which is a ballot question committee. There is no website. Also, the Michigan Chamber of Commerce and the Michigan Republican Party. You should be aware that there's 2 things happening right now. There's a gerrymandering lawsuit as well as a proposal to redistricting commission. The League of Women Voters of Michigan lawsuit is set for trial in February 2019 and asks the court to declare the districts that were drawn in 2011 as unconstitutional and to require new districts to be drawn. If successful, this lawsuit would affect districts for the 2020 election. Proposal 2, if passed in November 2018, would require the state of Michigan to take many steps starting in December 2019 to set up an independent citizen redistricting commission that would draw the districts in 2021 after the 2020 census for districts that would be in effect for the 2022 election. So both the lawsuit and the proposal 2 would affect district lines for Congress and the state's House and Senate. Proposal 3, promote the vote. This reads, a proposal to authorize automatic and election day voter registration, no reason absentee voting, and straight ticket voting, and add current legal requirements for military and overseas voting and post-election audits to the Michigan Constitution. This proposed constitutional amendment would allow a U.S. citizen who is qualified to vote in Michigan to become automatically registered to vote when applying for, updating, or renewing a driver's license or state-issued personal identification card, unless the person declines. Simultaneously register to vote with proof of residency and obtain a ballot during the 2-week period prior to an election, up to and including election day. Obtain an absentee voter ballot without providing a reason. Cast a straight ticket vote for all candidates of a particular political party when voting in a partisan general election. So, talking about using a secret ballot, 39 states have this in their constitution. We do not. The right to a secret ballot is now left to the legislature, so it could change without the vote of the people. The military, as mentioned, the military members and overseas voters receive an absentee ballot at least 45 days before the election, so they can get returned in time. So putting it in the Constitution demonstrates a commitment. The option to vote a straight party ticket, Michigan's had that for 127 years. Then there was a, the legislature passed a PA 268 in 2016 to ban straight party ticket voting. There was a federal lawsuit filed, and the courts put a ban on the law going into effect. Then in September, on September 5th of this year, the courts took away that ban. So for this election, as mentioned earlier, there is no straight ticket voting in November. So, automatically registering citizens to vote at the Secretary of State's office unless the citizen declines. So automatic voter registration when conducting business with the state, 14 states do it this way. So you would opt out instead of opting in with this proposal. Allowing a citizen to register by mail up to 15 days before election. Right now, you can do that. Michigan's law is 30 days. 38 states and the District of Columbia allow more time to register. And they're also, in this proposal, they're proposing to be able to register in person 14 days before an election, including election day. 19 states already allow this. Allowing to have a no reason absentee ballot. This would, currently we don't have that right now. There are certain criteria you have to meet if you want an absentee ballot. With this, you wouldn't have to have any reason to request that. And then also ensuring the accuracy of the integrity of elections by auditing. Right now, 32 states have a mandatory post-election audit, and we do not have this. So those that support this, the pro side, they're saying every eligible person can vote and every vote will count. Make voting accessible, secure, and fair. It allows for democracy to better serve all Americans and for laws to better reflect the will of the people. Everyone, Republicans, Democrats, and Independents, deserve to have their votes secure and counted. And that's from PromoteTheVote.com, Michigan.com. List of supporters for this. There's quite a few supporters for this. On the con side, the statement is, while the proposal seemingly has good parts, like secret ballots, post-election audits, and helping military personnel cast ballots, these items are already written into law, and their inclusion in this proposal serves only to mislead voters about its true purpose. Vote no on Proposal 3. The source for that is Protect My Vote. So the opposing organizations for this one is Protect My Vote, which is a ballot question committee, and it has no website.
back one slide, please, just for a second?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So, again, election information. Marilyn's already told you about vote411.org, and you can tell your friends and relatives anywhere in the country that they can access 411.org, vote411.org, and find their particular ballot information. If they're in a community where there is no league, they will have all the state information because the state league will have inputted that in there for their ballot. Of course, absentee ballots are out there. Yesterday was the last day to register to vote, so I'm sure all of you are already registered. Don't forget to vote on Election Day, November 6th. Polls open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Remember, you cannot vote a straight party ticket in the partisan section. And remember to go to the nonpartisan section to vote for the proposals. So again, what's different on your ballot? We will not have, typically there's a partisan section where you can check your particular party, and you cannot do that this time. So again, thank you for coming. Again, this has been funded in part by the League of Voters Education Fund, and I'll be happy to entertain any questions. Yes?
Will you be able to take a list of the candidates you want to vote for into the voting booth?
Yes, you may do that. You can take your paper voter guide in, like what's being passed out there. You can mark it up, and that's perfectly fine to take it in. You cannot, of course, when you go to the polls, you can't wear any campaign candidate buttons or T-shirts, but the voter's guide is perfectly fine.
Thank you.
Yes?
On that slide I asked you to go back to, it said something like, on the opposition, it serves to mislead the voter as to the true purpose of the proposal. But they don't state what the true purpose, what their view of the true purpose of the proposal is.
Correct.
What is it?
I don't know. I'm sorry. Yeah, I mean, that's their statement.
That's their statement, but
Yes.
they don't say what they think the true purpose of the proposal is.
Have not seen that, no.
Okay.
No reason absentee voting.
I think the main thing is the single party, the straight ticket
Oh.
voting.
Straight ticket voting?
No, that did benefit the Republicans.
There is some controversy about whether they should have straight ticket voting or not, and perhaps,
That's
I don't know for sure, but that could be, but that hasn't been, I mean, that wasn't
They
stated.
don't have a website, so you can't really ask.
That's correct. There's no website to verify. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes?
In terms of gerrymandering, this page 2 of your magazine or the paper, it doesn't seem to make any sense at all in the Detroit area. But would that solve this problem?
I'm not sure what,
Well, there's no
district
sense
map.
oh, it's a district map?
The district map.
Oh, okay. I haven't seen this one yet.
Not knowing the Detroit area, I'm wondering if the gerrymandering.
Oh, okay.
That's the Detroit.
Yes, it's been gerrymandered.
Everything else,
Yeah.
He wants you to repeat the question.
Okay. The question is, does the Detroit area appear to be gerrymandered? And according to the map, congressional district map in the state voter guide, and that's how it appears.
So proposal 2 would resolve this.
Proposal 2 would resolve that because they're saying that they would look at the whole state. The commission would be representatives from around the state, and they would be looking at trying to draw the lines in a more fair fashion. There's all kinds of computer software to do that, and so they would have public hearings and be very transparent in their process.
Okay. Also, is there any budget for this committee?
Yes, there is a budget, and I can look up exactly. There's a percentage that they're proposing. The legislature would appropriate funding for the commission in the year before the census, which couldn't be lower than 25% of what's appropriated to the Secretary of State's office. So if they were funding the commission this year, it would be at least $4.6 million. which is a quarter of the Secretary of State's $18.5 million budget. And the funding would continue every year the commission is actively operating. So, maybe it takes a year to draw and approve the maps, and maybe they have to go to court. Maybe there's going to be some lawsuits about it, and they'd have to go to court to defend it. So commissioners would report their expenditures, they would have an annual audit, and they'd have to return any unused money at the end of the year. And they would be paid, according to the proposal, at least a quarter of the governor's salary. So if it were this year, commissioners would be paid $39,825, which would be a little over $500,000 for 13 members.
That's per year.
Yes, per year. So it might take a year, it might take several years.
For a part-time job, right?
Yeah. Well, I don't know how long it, I don't know how many hours
You
it.
don't need to be a rocket scientist
Yeah.
to do this.
No. That's how the proposal is suggesting it should be, the money should be allocated. In the back?
So the commission wouldn't be permanent, though, would it? It would be every 10 years?
Correct. It would be every 10 years. Yeah, it would just be for that particular time that period, say 2021, and then comes the next 10 years, they would have a different, they go through the whole process again and choose a different 13-member commission. Mhm. Yes. Yes, sir.
Moving on to marijuana, you said that the cons were saying it would generate about $40 million a year and $48 million in taxes, and the pros were saying it could be hundreds of millions. What are the states, on average, that have legalized marijuana? Washington State, Colorado, California. What are they generating in reality since they've got it?
I don't have those figures. The question is, because of on the marijuana proposal, the opponents are saying 48 million, thereabouts, would be raised in revenue, and the supporters are saying it'd be hundreds of millions of dollars. What has happened in other states, I'm sorry, I don't have that information, but you could probably contact the supporters of this proposal. They have a website, and they probably would have that information available for you if you asked. I don't.
Just ask your phone.
Yes, sir?
I have a question about the top proposal. On the cultivation side particularly, do the municipalities or townships that are going to be licensing, do they merely have a yes/no on licensing, or can they designate on the cultivation side a restriction to say we would allow A and B licenses but not C? We don't want to have a grow concern that big in our municipality. Is that possible?
My understanding is that they're letting the local communities have, well, the question is, would this local communities be able to regulate the kinds of growers' licenses in the community? And my understanding from this proposal is that they're letting the local communities have as much control, have strong control of what they're going to allow.
So that would be a yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, sir?
In that same proposal, is there any control on where the pot would be consumed? Is it, you would smoke it in public? Is that a...
That's, well, of course, that doesn't really address that. It talks about it has to be in locked containers, and how many ounces you can have, but it doesn't really address where. Yes?
I live in an apartment complex, and my apartment complex, I had to sign a form that there will be no marijuana smoke, regardless of what the state is going to do. So I think that places would be able to decide that themselves.
Okay, she's saying that in her apartment complex, she had to sign a statement that she would not have marijuana in her apartment.
Not in my
Well, you would not. You would not use.
No one is allowed to use.
No one is allowed to use it.
Marijuana on the premise
On the premise, okay, no one's allowed to use it on the premises,
Or inside.
Or inside.
Or outside.
inside or outside, regardless of what the state does. Yes, and that's, again, that's local control.
Right.
Yes. Mhm. Anything else? Yes, ma'am.
The analytics turn out bad after, should this constitutional amendment be ratified, adopted, how could that decision be reversed? Would it take another election for a constitutional amendment?
As I said earlier, a constitutional amendment, once the voters have passed it, it's there. Now, there could be perhaps a court,
And it can't be reversed?
cannot be reversed. Whereas a law,
It could be reversed by amendment.
yeah, say the marijuana is a law. So it could be a constitutional amendment such as Proposal 2 or Proposal 3. They cannot be changed once the voters approve it. Marijuana is a voter-initiated law. Yeah, okay. So 3/4 of both houses can change any voter-initiated law.
Okay, good.
So, okay. And there could be, court, there might be court law, action too. Anything else? Yes?
Can you say how the districts are currently drawn? Do we know who draws them?
Right now, they were drawn in 2011 by the Republican Party because they were in control of the legislature. And then the governor signed,
How does the Republican Party do that? Just with a committee?
they did not do it by public, there was no public hearing, anything like that. That was done through the committee, I believe. But, some states do it that way. Some states have citizen commissions. There's a variety of different ways it can be done. Yes?
So the way that we draw the districts now, is that part of the original constitution for Michigan? Or was it, have there been amendments before that changed how the districts were drawn?
I believe originally in the Constitution they did allow for a citizens commission, and there kept being difficulties. So finally, they decided that they would just do it by, which party is in control.
So the legislature and Senate decided, or was
So-
it an amendment?
So the legislature has decided to take control of that process. They've done it for the last several cycles now from the census.
Was that an amendment? That wouldn't have been an amendment.
No.
Because that has to be voted on.
Right. Mhm.
And then the other question I have is, I don't know if you can answer this, but the ballots this time are not, you can't vote for one party and that would be all the candidates.
Correct. It is that.
So what the question is are the candidates going to be listed in alphabetical order under what they're running for, or how is that going to be set up? Like, will the governor candidates be listed all in one area, and will it be alphabetical, or how else?
Right. If you look in the voter guide, for example, for Senate, for U.S. Senator, it lists by party: Republican Party, Democratic Party, U.S. Taxpayer Party, Green Party, Natural Law Party. So it goes by, not necessarily alphabetically, but it lists by party. So that was what you'll see on the ballot.
And will the party be listed with the
Yes.
candidates?
Yes. It's always been that way. It's just that you could opt to check, I want everybody to be from the Green Party or whatever, U.S. Taxpayers Party, whatever. You could just check that box and all the candidates in that party would automatically be chosen. But now you have to go through each office and each candidate. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
I'd like to clarify that not only are the propositions nonpartisan, but there's also the Supreme Court judges, the states.
Yes, correct. Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you. Yes, the Supreme Court justices as well as the proposals. So you have to go through the whole ballot, turn it over, make sure you hit everything. Yes.
Also the city, if you have any city votes or village votes, those are also nonpartisan, and school board.
Yes.
So those are all nonpartisan, local school.
Local, yes. Anything else? Yes, sir?
When this commission draws a new map, can that map be appealed to the Michigan State Supreme Court?
Sure.
Yeah. So it's really important that good justices be elected to the Supreme Court at this juncture especially.
Okay.
Megan Stoss and Megan Kavanaugh.
So he's saying that there can be a court action, and if you're talking about redistricting, and it's important if there were to be any kind of a court action that, yeah, I think, sir, you said it was important to vote. Be sure you're voting for the judges. Okay. Anything else? Yes?
Just to clarify on that issue of how we got to this place in terms of the legislature now doing the enforcement, isn't it correct that it's a result of a lawsuit that did go to the Supreme Court in 1982? Prior to that, the Michigan Constitution of 1963 did have a very similar process that involved a citizens' commission for redistricting. But in the elections that followed the census in the decennial census in 70 and 80, there was no map that came out of that process because the committee under the original Constitution was split 50-50 Republicans and Democrats. And so there were no unaffiliated people. There were also an even number of people. So that system failed because of simple mathematics in a way, and the partisanship of those appointments. But it was mentioned that somehow the legislature took it over. Well, the legislature, of course, can't just take over something that's in the Constitution. And so what happened instead was the case of in reapportionment in 1982 at the Supreme Court of Michigan, in which the Supreme Court looked at this problem that had existed for the past 2 decades and said, we need to have a solution. And isn't it correct that they're finding an order states, the court directs the drawing of election districts in a manner compliant with federal constitution requirements, consistent with the constitutional history of this state, and the resulting redistricting and apportionment plan shall stand until the legislature and the governor or the people provide by law an alternate plan. And so when the chief counsel of the Chamber of Commerce said that this changes the basic foundation of state governing structure, removing the voice of the legislature and the governor, did he say anything about this decision that said, or the people can provide by law an alternative plan?
You saw what was up on the slide. That's what that person said. Okay, anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.